Hello, everybody. Thanks for coming. So, in both my studies here at Williston and my time in Spain, I've developed an insatiable curiosity for political groups and ideologies outside the typical sphere. And even though I don't usually agree with those often radical ideas, I can't seem to tame my need to understand the ideologies that are unfamiliar or scare me. So in the spring of 2015, I discovered Basque Country. For a capstone project, I wanted to learn more about the mysterious northernmost part of Spain and its rocky history. After weeks of research, predominantly on ETA, the former Basque terrorist organization, I went to Vitoria-Gasteiz, the small capital of Basque Country, to interview people, search the streets, and observe political demonstrations of the region's nationalist movements. This year, in Williston Scholars, I chose to continue my studies of radical organizations. I was deeply interested in the radicalization process of why and how people become involved with these organizations, which led me to the curious case of Peru's Shining Path. For my creative aspect of this project, I wrote journal entries in different perspectives of various people involved with the organization and its effects, but today I would like to present my research. Ibamil Guzman was the father and leader of the Maoist communist organization in Peru of the 1970s to the 1990s. The organization was named from the words of José Carlos Mariátegui, the political philosopher who founded Peru's first communist party in 1920. He said, "Marxism-Leninism will open the shining path to revolution." Guzman began his teaching career in Ayacucho, Peru, where he became increasingly political. Guzman was enthralled with Mao Zedong, the 1950s leader of the Chinese Communist Party and founder of the People's Republic of China, who acted on violent theories of a communist revolution via politically educated peasants. Guzman witnessed Mao's Cultural Revolution, which fought the bourgeois during Guzman's transformative visits to China in the late 1960s. I'm going to play a student documentary in the background while I speak. Peru's economy for decades relied on natural resources, including fishing and farming, but tremendous exploitation of those resources assisted to the 1970s economic crisis. The leading fishing industry of anchovies peaked in 1970 at a 12 million ton catch, but by 1972, the catch fell by 9 million tons as a result of extreme overfishing and an El Nino season. President Juan Velasco Alvarado, who seized power via military coup in 1996, did nothing to aid the crisis, as the land reform plan took another stab at the poor economy. The land reform plan took away land from peasant farmers in a failed attempt to nationalize the farming industry. The effects of the failed fishing industry and newly expropriated farms added to the social upheaval as millions of unemployed Peruvians flooded into the capital city of Lima. Not only was the Peruvian economy hurting, but for many people, a way of life was taken away. For generations of Peruvians who peacefully lived off the land and sea, that life was stolen. After the increasing failures and authoritarianism of President Velasco Alvarado, General Francisco Morales Bermudez launched another military coup and gained power in 1975. Continued social unrest, economic struggles, and governmental incompetence pushed Peruvians towards the temptations of extremism. Guzman took advantage of the vulnerable state to begin spreading his ideology. In 1980, Peru began its move back towards democracy and held the first democratic elections in 17 years. Guzman seized the opportunity and launched his own armed struggle to overthrow the Peruvian government with a militant communist regime. Shining Path committed its first act of terrorism by burning the ballot boxes. Within a decade, an estimated 18,000 people were killed at the hands of Shining Path in gruesome massacres across Lima and the Andes region. Meanwhile, the economy fell once more, and the country suffered from extreme debt. due to governmental indifference towards the Andes Highlands region that Shining Path operated in. By the mid-1980s, Shining Path had gained control of large parts of central and southern Peru. After ignoring them for years, the 1980s President Belaunde Terry was forced to take notice of Shining Path. Rather than a productive response, he sporadically sent troops into the Shining Path controlled areas. Without a clear plan or mission, the troops massacred villages of peasant civilians and committed further human rights violations, fanning the flames of rebellion. In total, an estimated 70,000 Peruvians died due to internal conflicts. Shining Path was finally defeated in 1990 when President Fujimori worked to end terrorism by dissolving Peru's government, pausing Congress, imposing restrictions on the country, and instituting a new constitution. The socio and economic political realities of Peru during the 1970s and 1980s helped Guzman's powerful ideologies gain support. To the Peruvian people who had little faith in their government to help their struggling country, Shining Path was really just that, a glimmer of hope. But illustrated by President Belaunde Terry's failed reaction in 1985, fighting violence with violence was only counterproductive and did more harm than good. Innocent people continued to die, and Shining Path was given a sense of moral superiority as the injustices of Peru's government peaked. The case of Shining Path and Peru sheds light to a critical lesson of the utmost relevancy today, that extremism is driven by social insecurities. These social, political, and economic issues are the root that terrorism and extremism grow from. Shining Path rose, motivated by a failing economy, social upheaval, and an inept government. Extremism that breaks down to those fundamental concerns, yes, requires defensive combat, but more importantly, requires change that addresses those fundamental concerns. The conclusion I came to during my studies is that defensive violence should only be used supplementary to addressing the underlying societal issues when counteracting terrorism. Thank you. He was caught in 1992. Aladdin. Any questions? Amelia?
Why did you decide to study Shining Path in particular out of all of the different communist or socialist uprisings?
Good question. It kind of changed. I came into this project wanting to focus more on the actual radicalization process, which set Shining Path apart a little bit because Shining Path was unique in the sense that the organization started in Ayacucho, Peru, where Guzman taught philosophy, and many of his students became Shining Path's most active political activists and members, and he ended up becoming the head of staff for the university and handpicking radical faculty members. And so the university was basically like a radicalization factory and radicalized a generation of students. And it's the ideology spread to many other universities. So it was really like a student-based faction at first. And then my project kind of migrated as I read more about Peru and gained like a profound interest in how Peru suffered from all of these like socioeconomic and political factors that correlated directly with the movements of Shining Path. And so I thought it was pretty unique in that sense. Thank you. Thank you,